The first thing she said to me standing 6 feet away with a clipboard like a cudgel was, "Get off my land before I have you arrested," and I thought for a second that she was joking until she didn't stop walking. I looked down at the surveyor's map in my hand at the little stamped county lines that said this was mine, and I watched her chest heave with righteous fury. And I knew then this was not going to be a neighborly disagreement, it was going to be a war. My name is Michael Carter, and I bought 5 acres of honest dirt because I wanted a life that smelled like soil instead of fluorescent light. The morning I moved in, the field still wore dew like an apology. The sky was clear. The fence between me and Maplewood Heights HOA looked like an old argument waiting to happen, and Karen Whitman showed up in a cream blazer like a judge delivering a sentence. She stopped exactly at the fence line and treated that sliver of wood like a county border she somehow owned. "Any construction here requires HOA approval," she said. Voice flat, nails tapping a rhythm on the clipboard. Behind her, Tom Reeves took a photo of my temporary cabin. Susan Park looked at me with apologetic eyes. The whole thing felt staged theater with bad lighting. I held up my phone and showed her the county map. "This land isn't in your jurisdiction," I said. She didn't look. "That's irrelevant," she told me as if legal documents were creative suggestions. She left a letter on my gate that afternoon. White envelope, HOA seal, pressed into it, words in red. Notice of violation. I laughed out of disbelief, out of that small human panic where your brain refuses to accept that other people can be so audacious. Then I started to document everything day one, evidence folder camera at the gate, a voice memo of the encounter. I thought naively that showing the facts would be enough. I thought wrong. The next week was escalation in chapters. Karen turned a single visit into a campaign. She called an emergency HOA meeting and painted me with the smooth cruelty of practiced liars as a developer in disguise. Industrial operation noise. "Property values at risk," she said, while the photo Tom had taken of my rickety cabin flashed on the projector and the neighbors nodded pens, scratching on petition forms that would ask the county to deny permits. I watched them through the fence, listening while she lied, while she stacked small plausible fears into a mountain. The worst part was how fast people believed her. They had no reason not to. I started to feel invisible, not invisible like safe, but invisible in the most dangerous way, like my voice had been removed from the room. Then the harassment got physical. Padlock cut off my gate at night, tire tracks across the yard, scratch marks I hadn't seen in the evening light, and a camera I hadn't yet upgraded showed 2 silhouettes moving through the dark one with bolt cutters, one taking photos of my windows. They didn't get inside. They prowled, they tested, they left a message with their actions. "We can come onto your land whenever we want." I replayed that footage until the pixels blurred. I called the police. They took a report. Officer Callahan told me people like this escalate even if they're in the wrong. I also called Ethan Walker, my old friend turned attorney, who listened and then said, calm and precise, "You have the law on your side. Document everything. Expect escalation. Expect escalation." Those words settled like a stone in my chest. There was a night I almost gave up. The kind of night where everything that could go wrong had where you sit on the floor of your cabin surrounded by printed photos, and you feel diminutive, tiny, and ridiculous for thinking you could stand against a whole community's imagination. I lay awake and asked myself aloud, did I make a mistake buying this land? Am I the outsider everyone fears? Maybe I should sell. Move on, find a quieter life. The temptation to fold was real. It was soft. It wrapped around me and I almost answered it. But then, a voicemail showed up from Iris Morgan, a woman on the HOA board who sounded scared and ashamed. "She's planning something bigger," Iris whispered. "Please be careful." That one message changed the mood in me. Anger is useful, but what got me moving again was a cleaner thing, clarity. This wasn't about whether my life fit in some neighborhood aesthetic. This was criminal, and I had proof. So I doubled down. I upgraded cameras to 4K, added license plate recognition motion sensors, cloud backups. I paid $8.5 grand to make sure if anything happened, I'd have it on record. I color-coded my evidence folder. I filed complaints. I talked to the district attorney. The more prepared I got, the less they could fold the narrative away with rumors. Then, they tried the riskiest thing. They hired imposters. 2 men showed up in uniform-looking clothes with a laminated court order, rushed and blaring like a bad heist movie, telling me I had 10 minutes to vacate. Their documents looked official if you squinted. The taller one, Blake, barked the timeline, 10 minutes essential belongings only, while the other, Kim, tried to look menacing. I kept the camera rolling. I dialed 911 and I kept my phone between my palms like a rosary. The imposters underestimated the one thing they hadn't accounted for: evidence. Officers arrived, real ones, and the whole theater crumpled. The counterfeit badges, the wrong badge numbers, the fake court seal that printed like clip art. It was all on camera. When the real law pulled up and circled the fakes, I felt something heavy in my chest unclench because I'd been proven right, and someone who had spent months creating a fiction to take my land was suddenly exposed in full color. They handcuffed the 2 men. The senior officer watched a clip that showed Karen in the distance directing the operation through a phone. That's when I learned something ugly and useful. People who believe they are untouchable will try to make their crimes look like civic duty. What the police found in Karen's study when they executed the search warrant was worse than I had imagined: surveys she'd obtained illegally, contracts with men she'd paid to impersonate officers' notes on previous targets. Her scheme wasn't a single bad idea. It was a pattern. The district attorney moved, charges were filed, and the evidence padded out of my laptop into court exhibits. The charges were specific: heavy impersonation conspiracy, trespass, vandalism, attempted burglary, fraud, the kind of list that makes defense counsel sweat. Her lawyer failed to make the argument that her conduct was merely overzealous. Overzealous doesn't pay bolt cutters or forge court orders. In the end, she pleaded guilty to several counts. The judge read the sentence with the same dry cadence that had delivered petty cash entries my whole adult life: convicted, remanded, restitution ordered. I watched from the back of the courtroom as she sat, small, not the queen of the cul-de-sac anymore, just a woman facing paper and bars. I handed my files to detectives who smiled at me like I'd done them a favor. I didn't feel triumphant, though I felt hollow, relieved, finished in that particular battle, but mindful of the cost. They stripped her of HOA power. The board removed her unanimously. Iris took over, and the HOA rewrote bylaws so they couldn't abuse them again. I built a 10-foot concrete wall along the boundary, not out of spite, but because boundaries matter. I planted vines so the wall would soften into green. The cameras stayed silently recording the days when nothing dramatic happened. When the final papers settled, restitution court orders a sentence, there was no banquet, no victory lap. People came to me with apologies, some real, some awkward. Others kept their distance. The point is not that I won in a moral scoreboard. The point is that documentation mattered, that the law could be wielded when supported by clear evidence, and that someone who built power on lies could be unmasked. Stick to your facts. Keep your recordings, and don't let the noise of a confident lie drown out what you actually own. Boundaries matter.